Hi, I'm Shanoa from Attentive. I'm here today with Montel, who's going to be coaching us through chess, and also Laurel and Mia, who will be learning with us today. So let's
Hi
get
guys,
into it.
how are you?
Not bad,
Good.
how are you?
Great, thank you. Looking forward to it?
Yes, very.
Mhm.
I feel like I've taken a lot of notes. I've been writing as much down as I can. And I like to think I've got quite a good memory. So I hope it's all going in.
Right, excellent. What we'll be doing is we'll be keep on going over some of the key principles anyway. So you're not expected to remember everything at this stage. What
Yeah.
we've done at the very start is we looked at what the names are and where they're placed. In a moment, we're going to go into what castling is, a move that people often don't play with en passant, which you need to know at the beginning of the game. Okay, and then we're going to checkmate. It's really important that people know about checkmate. And then I'll talk about what the values are of each piece, because they've all got different values. So we'll go into them. And if at any stage you have any questions, let us know. So straight into it, over to Shanoa. Can you first of all tell us what are the conditions for castling?
Right, the conditions of castling are you have to have no other pieces other than the king and the castle on the back row, isn't it?
Yes.
From what I
In the
understand.
direction that they intend to castle on.
Yeah, and then so if you castle on the king's side, you can't have any pawns, different pieces between the castle and the king itself, because then you need to move the king to the corner that you want to castle on, and then move the castle to the outside of the king. Same with the queen's side. If you want to castle on the queen's side, then you go over to that side as long as there are no pieces in the way, and castle on that side. And it just basically protects your king a little better, doesn't it?
Right, okay, I'll just add into that. So first of all, the whole point of playing chess is to capture your opponent's king. It's easier to catch a king if it's in the middle of the board. Normally, you can move one piece at a time, but when you castle, it's the only time in the game that you can move two pieces at once. The idea is you've both got the opportunity of trying to protect your king, putting it into a better position, so it's in a more protected position than what it would be in the middle of the board. There are some conditions that you must use before you can castle. First of all, it must be your king's first move. If your king has moved, it cannot then castle. Second condition is if your rook or your castle has moved, you can't castle with that rook. If you've not moved the other castle, you can castle on that side. Okay. Third, you cannot castle into or across check. And I'll talk to you more as we go on about what we mean by castling into and across check. So those three conditions need to apply before you can castle. So if you castle on your king side, what you do is you move your king 2 places to the left, and your rook goes behind the king. Can you see the diagram in front of me?
Yeah.
And that's all in one move.
Yes, in one move. So your king goes here and your rook goes here in one move. Or you can castle on your queen side. You move your king 2 places to the left and your rook goes next to it, all in one move. Usually you'll have pawns in front of it in that rank. You may have moved some of the pawns, but you should have some pawns in front of the king. Okay. Now, earlier we mentioned that the pawns can move 2 places if they're on that first row. Or they can choose to move 1. If you move your pawn 1 pace off the first row, it can then only move 1 after that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If there's nothing in the way, it gets to the end, it can have another piece. It's called pawn promotion. So the pawn can then grow into a queen or a knight or any other piece that you choose. There's a move called en passant. Laurel, have you heard of that?
No.
Okay, great. So what that means is if you've advanced your pawn up to this square, so that is square 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you're white, or if you are black, you advance your pawn to this square, okay, which is square 4. Okay, you know that they can take to the side, right? So what normally happens is black can usually move this pawn here on the A square up to 2 places, or they can choose to move it 1. The pawn on the B square can only move 1 because that's in the way. Pawn on the C square can move 2 or can move 1, can't it?
Okay, yeah.
So en passant is a French word, and it means you shall not pass. And what that actually means is what you can then do if your opponent moves 2 squares, you can say en passant and take it, as if it only moved 1. But you can only do that if you do it on your next go. So let's assume that I'm playing against Shanoa and I'm white. I'm here, and Shanoa moves the pawn on the C square 2. On my next go, I can either decide to en passant here, or I can decide to move maybe a knight out. If I decide to move another piece, then I lose my right to take that.
Okay.
So you can only do it on the next go. Okay. So basically, what's happened here is the white pawn has moved up to here. Okay. My opponent has moved this pawn 2 places, because they're entitled to only if they're on that first rank. So I'm going to take it on my next go. When I take it, it looks like that. You remove off the square and I move into here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now what we're going to do is talk about check. So over to Shanoa. Can you talk to us about this check position and what it means, and then I'll add to it.
Right, so from my amateurish point of view, the queen has a direct line over to the white king right down there. And there's nothing really to protect it. So you would have to move. I don't know what you could do here, actually.
Okay, so thank you for that. That's great. So basically, you know that the queen can move diagonal or straight. Now, if the queen is here in its normal place, the pawn has been moved, enabling the queen to come out on a diagonal square. Yeah. So the queen is now over here. All the squares that the queen can move on to are squares that the queen are attacking. Yes. Now the queen has got a direct attack to the king. So if it does have a direct attack, that is called check. So you move here and you put the king into check. Now the king, remember before when we talked about what the king can do, number one, consider if it can take it. King can only move 1, so it can't take it. No other piece can take the queen either because they're not in reach. So taking is out of the question. Number 2, can the king move? Yes, the king can't move here because that square here is still under attack from the queen, but it can move 1 in front. So it can move out of check. Or the third option, the queen can, well, white can move a pawn in front and block off the attack from the queen. So it can either move the pawn through 1 or it can move out the way. Does that make sense? Checkmate is when you call check and your opponent cannot move out of the way. So in this situation, if you look at the position of the white king, I'm circling the white king. Yeah?
Mhm.
And then the black king. Now the black king is being attacked by the queen. The black king cannot move back because your pawn's in the way. Cannot move onto this square because that square and that square and that square are all being attacked by the white queen. Because the white queen is attacking all these squares here. So the king is now trapped and is captured. And that is what checkmate looks like. It cannot take because the knight is defending the queen. It cannot move or it cannot block. That's what we call checkmate. Okay. Stalemate is when it's a move, your go or your opponent's move, and they cannot do what's called a legal move, and they're not in check. So for example, in this situation, the white king is not in check from any piece, but it cannot move forward because of the pawn, okay? And two kings cannot meet. So it can't take that pawn because there must be one square ahead. It cannot go into these two squares. Cannot move back because you can't take your own piece. And it cannot move onto these squares because of the queen. So that's the queen, and all these squares here are being attacked by the queen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do now is go back to the beginning, and we're going to first of all talk about the values of each piece. I'm going to ask Genoa to remind us how much points each piece is worth. Laurel, do you know the value of the pieces?
No, I don't know the value.
Okay, so we're going to the value of the pieces, and then as we've talked about that, I'll ask Mia if you can remember and describe each piece, how they move. Obviously, the diagram's in front of you there. So if you get stuck, my two assistants will help you. So first of all, over to Shinoa. Can you remind us about what the values are, starting with the rook?
Right, the rook or castle is 5 points, and then you move on to the horse, which is worth 3 points. Next to that is the bishop, which is worth 3.5 points. And if we're starting from A1, then next to that comes the queen. She's worth 9 points, and obviously the king is invaluable. He's worth all the points. Or he's priceless because he's so useful. That's what you're trying to get to win, is the king. So
Excellent.
pawns are worth 1.
Yes, pawns are worth 1, absolutely. Laurel, any questions on the value of the points?
Yeah, what's the point of the values?
So the point of the value is when we start playing, which will be very shortly, you will be attacking and defending and taking pieces. Because of how they move, they've got different values. So you'll be doing exchanges and you'll be doing sacrifices. Okay, so the queen can move like a rook and a bishop, so it's got more value than these two put together. That's got 3.5, and that's got 5, so that's 8.5. It's slightly more than both of them two.
Okay.
These two here are called minor pieces. The knight or the horse and the bishop, they're called minor pieces, so they were worth 3.5 because of how they move. And then the rook is worth 5 because it can move straight, and that's a more powerful move than if you move diagonal. The pawns are worth 1, apart from if they're about to get queened, then obviously they're going to be quite valuable, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's look at how we'll do a quick recap on how the pawns move. Mia, can you look at the diagram and tell us again what that is telling you how the pawns move?
So I may be incorrect, I don't know, but from what I can remember you saying, you said that for the first move, can they move forwards two spaces.
Yeah, 2 spaces.
But that's the only time that they can go 2.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then they can't do it again. If they move 1, then they can only move 1 after
Exactly. Well done. Yeah. Great.
that. I think, is there anything else about them? Like the way that they move?
Yeah, so if you look on the diagram, when they're attacking,
It says that they can go diagonally forwards in my book, but I'm not sure if I'm...
Yes. So
right.
the forward right diagonal means what squares they attack on. So they're attacking forward left and forward right.
Yeah.
So that's what that means. So if there's your opponent's piece on either those 2 squares you are attacking or controlling those squares.
Cool.
And then if there's a piece in front of it, they cannot move any further forward.
Yeah.
What happens when a pawn gets to the end, Mia?
They can have something called a pawn promotion where you can change them, well, not change them, but kind of promote them to another piece. I believe that you said that a majority of the time people will go for a queen, but sometimes people might go for a knight because of the way that they move. It's just a bit more useful to have, I guess.
Well done. That's perfect. Excellent. What about a castle?
What would you promote it to a castle?
Now,
Or how to move?
how does the castle move?
They can go straight upwards. They can go like vertically or horizontally, but they can't go diagonal in any way, I think.
Excellent. And you're right. Good. What about a knight?
So are they the only one that can jump pieces? They're the only ones that can go over another piece.
Yeah.
And they go in an L shape, so they can either go like 1 and then 2, or 2 and then 1 in different directions.
Perfect. Well done. What about bishop?
They can go diagonally in any direction, I believe. Yeah, I think that's it.
That's perfect. What about queen?
I wrote down that you said that they're kind of like a combination between a castle and a bishop with their movements.
Perfect.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well done. What about a king? How does a king move?
They can go in any direction, but they can only move 1 square at a time.
Great. And can 2 kings meet?
No, they've always got to have one of the, like, they've got to have 1 square's distance between them. They can't like come together.
Excellent. Brilliant. Okay. I'll leave that. Can you tell us about castling?
I tried to get to grips with it, so apologies if I mess up when I'm trying to in this, but it has to be the king's first move and the castle's first move.
Yeah.
And I believe that you said if it's on the king's side, it's to protect the king, isn't it? It's to like defend them. Yeah. You said if it's on the king's side, then the king can go 2 spaces to the left, and then the rook is behind the king in 1 move. Yeah. And if it's on the queen side, the king goes 2 spaces to the left, and the rook is next to it in 1 move. But it can that's the only time you can move 2 spaces in 1 move.
Yeah, exactly. Just a minor thing on that. 2 spaces to the right if it's on the king side, and 2.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
And 2 to the left if it's on the queen side.
Okay.
And then the castle goes on the other side of it, like in this diagram.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's perfect. Your description was really good. Okay.
Thank you.
What about en passant? What does that mean?
It means you shall not pass in French.
Yes.
And it's if a pawn advances to, I think it's the 4th square. Is it the 4th one?
Yeah. Well, 5th.
You can take it if the opponent moves theirs twice, I think.
Yeah. Right. Perfect. Well done. Excellent.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. So now we've covered how they move, and can you talk to us about check, Mia?
Yeah. So I just kind of tried to write down what Shanoa was saying. So she said to check your opponent. She said the queen has a direct line to the white king, and she can go straight or diagonally. And check is the queen's direct attack, isn't it? So if the queen is going to attack, you call it check.
If any piece is threatening your opponent's king, you call check.
Okay.
Okay, it could be
Okay.
the queen. It's the queen in this particular situation, but it could be any piece.
Okay.
Excellent. Why checkmate?
Is that when you call check and the opponent can't move away from the situation, so there's kind of no choice but for you to take the king?
Yes, exactly. So the king should always have three things. Number one, consider if it can take the piece. If the piece is defended, it can't take it. That's ruled out. Number two, can the king move? And if it can't move, that's ruled out. The last option is, can it block where the check is coming from? If that is ruled out, then end of game. And if you call check to your opponent, you've won the game. They call check to you, then obviously they've won the game.
Yeah.
Excellent. What's stalemate?
That's, I've got here, it says they can't do the piece can't do like a legal move, so it can't do what it's supposed to do, and it's not in position for check either.
Yes, perfect. And so stalemate means it's a draw.
Yeah.
So basically, if you are down in points or you're not in a good position and you want to carry on, you may, and if you don't think your opponent is capable of winning, you can play for a draw. And that's called stalemate. That's perfect in terms of what we've looked at today. Is we've gone back over all the main rules of the game. We've looked at how we put up the board, and we looked at the value of all the pieces. Okay. Any questions on that so far?
No, I don't think so.
I've got one question on stalemate.
Yes.
So I've played chess online a couple of times for fun, and it's come to stalemate when like I'm moving a piece and then they keep moving it to a way that they can take me, so I'm kind of stuck, but I don't know how to explain it. So like two pieces.
Actually, there's one more thing. You're right to highlight that.
Okay.
There's another occasion when you can get stalemate. So thanks for reminding me about that. And basically, if you are in a position where you are forced to move the same movement 15 times, so say for example, you're trapped in a corner and you're going to go backward, forward, backward, forward, backward, forward.
Yeah.
You can play for stalemate. And that's if one person moves the same one 15 times, or if both of you are in the same situation whereby you both move the same thing, the same movement 3 times identical. So
Okay.
you've gone there and back, they've gone there and back, you've gone there and back, they've gone there and back, you've gone there and back, and they've gone there and back.
Okay.
So that's 2 more occasions for stalemate. So well done for pointing that out. Anything else?
No, I think that's everything. I think I understand everything you've explained.
Excellent. Okay. So now what we're going to do for the next update is we're now going to go into my top tip. So that's the end of this tutorial.